It's about to start. Yeah, it's on.
Okay, fantastic. So today we will be talking about chai discovery, which have been in the news quite frequently recently. So they just did their latest fundraising round for 400 million, their Series C, which is to further develop their AI, which helps with drug discovery. Uh, at a 3.8 billion valuation led by Index Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, Dimension, along with several others established firms. So yeah, they also did a deal with Novartis, Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and you were just talking before we started recording. Dan, you had some pretty interesting thoughts about this.
Yeah, I think it's probably good to kind of think about what it is that they're actually offering to begin with as a company compared to groups like Isomorphic Labs. I think from my perspective, their approach is a little bit more interesting. So we've been looking a lot at antibody drug conjugates, ADCs, bispecifics, trispecifics. What Chai are looking to do is use AI to help find the binding partners for certain antibodies. So you could basically design your own antibody to bind to anything you want in the cell. The difference, I think, with something like Isomorphic Labs is that where they're looking at small molecules that will bind to enzymes to inhibit them, Chai are trying to look for how you can make an antibody bind to a very specific site, and then you can drive that forward. And then, like AlphaFold, like Isomorphic Labs, they've got a huge database. They train it on that database. The successes from their output further train their models, and so on, so on, so on. And from what so far, they've lifted. So computational design of antibodies isn't new. It used to have a 0.1% success rate. And Chai have lifted that to about 20%, which is 200 times better than the previous technology. So that means that you can test 20 of the antibodies that they suggest might work, and 4 should work in real life, which is really high. That's really a lot in drug discovery, and that's taking something that might take years to months or weeks. So I think the concept is really interesting. I think what they're doing is really interesting. And I think from my part, the financial aspect of making antibodies is much, much cheaper than what Isomorphic Labs are proposing. Because Isomorphic Labs can tell you all the drugs that are going to bind to an enzyme, but you still need to get chemists to make those drugs. So that's a bottleneck that's going to exist. But with protein engineering, antibody production, you just need to make the DNA, make the gene, make the protein in some sort of vector, and then it's a very, very cheap throughput. So it's very accessible for lots of labs. You can test lots of these on a high scale. So when you've got a 20% success rate, that's really meaningful. And what we were talking about,
apparently, in their latest model, they say that they have doubled the success rate in Chai-3.
Yeah.
I saw the claims that they have doubled it in the latest one.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe from what I've read, they might have doubled it to 20%. I think 20% is the highest they've achieved so far. I mean, I think that to someone who's not involved in that kind of work, that can sound like a small number. But when you've had 0.1% success rate previously, and the amount of effort you have to go into for non-computational methods, I think what they're doing is really good. I think they've got a really nice niche.
Well, part of their claim is also that usually it would take months to do this type of work previously, and they claim that they can do it in a couple of days or weeks with the help of their discovery AI, their discovery platform.
I think that's probably true, because what you would have had to do before is expose So there's kind of two ways you would do it. You would either expose animals to an antigen and get them to make an antibody on a high scale and purify that. And that has its own complications. Or you can do what's called directed evolution, which is where you take your standard antibody and you randomly mutate it like you're doing evolution on a really fast scale until it finally binds to what you want it to bind to. So that is that kind of selection process. Those probably won't go away, but you'll be able to get a smaller cohort, or you might be able to start in a better position using chai, or even get straight to the binder itself. So I think it's going to be great for bispecifics, trispecifics, multivalent interactions. It's going to allow you to design 2 ends, 3 ends, 4 ends of an antibody to bind to whatever you want it to. But what I think is really interesting is what these deals actually mean that they're forming with Eli Lilly, Novartis, Pfizer. I think there's a temptation to see them as being the same as traditional biotech deals.
Yeah, well, it's not really. It's more a discovery play where they can use Shai's technology to develop assets of their own, as far as I understand it. They're more like a plug and play, like another tool that the scientists can use inside the companies. It doesn't seem like they want to have their own wet lab. Maybe they have some own developments that they haven't disclosed, but I haven't seen much in terms of them mentioning wanting to develop their own programs and assets.
Yeah, I don't think, as far as I'm aware, they don't have any of their own wet lab. That doesn't seem to be their approach. And I think that they are probably looking at a subscription style model. And then from a subscription style model, a dependency. For example, I mean, I think there's actually a lot of similarities to a Microsoft Office package in some regards. Your institution becomes so dependent on Word, PowerPoint, Excel, etc., that you're not going to go to a competitor because you've built your infrastructure around this technology. I think that that's probably what Chai will want to do as a business, because if they get Eli Lilly on board, they get Pfizer on board, these companies will independently build their own models within Chai's infrastructure. They will feed their confidential data, everything into this model. It will continue to train until it will become like an Eli Lilly specific model. And then they get I think Eli Lilly own the outputs of that. So anything that's developed from that belongs to Eli Lilly. But the core will be, it'd be like having, when you've had a really good session on ChatGPT and it knows everything that you want to talk about and it knows all your conversations and you can pick backwards and forwards. That, but on a massive scale and with biotech and drugs. So it'll become this massive source of information. Where I'm interested to see what happens is how training a model for one company will impact or is expected to impact another company.
Okay.
So for example, how would the Pfizer model, if they're training on Pfizer data and improving their model on Pfizer data, that clearly can't be used to improve the model that Eli Lilly will be working with.
Okay.
I would imagine.
To be honest, my take on it, I've been watching a lot of the new AI drug discovery wave, and I've become a bit jaded with seeing a lot of the VCs and PEs stepping in and investing a lot into these startups. Mm-hmm. It's only interesting when you see these MNCs step in and actually commit capital to it. I think that's the only indication that it might be going the right direction, and then there's actually something there. But we have some others like R&D Labs and Isomorphic Labs, the Google DeepMind spinouts. All are valued at 2 billion. Or 2 billion plus, but I don't see any molecule that's clinically validated yet. So it would be nice to see something that's actually going to have an impact on the market. And maybe we will see that soon.
We have in silico, they have some of their assets in later stage in the clinic. We have Schrödinger, which is also having some later stage assets, I believe. So there are some players that have been in this in more of a combo format where they have used AI to develop some of their assets, but not purely AI developed. That are entering phase 3. So that is when we will get the real proof about how this works.
I do want your take on something, Dan, when it comes to the typical S&E and external innovation of MNCs like Pfizer. How do you think this subscription would affect their appetite for new licenses?
For new licenses, did you say? Sorry.
So let's say someone like a smaller biotech, like recently we've seen quite a large portion of the pharma's successful assets have come via licensing and partnering. Do you think this might have an impact on those efforts?
So it's difficult to say because there's a long-term and a short-term view, right? So in the short term, I think the amount of money that Eli Lilly have spent on this is small, right? Because I was thinking about this today, and I was like, if they're spending 50 million a year for their subscription, this is a number that I've kind of just pulled out from various places. I don't know if that's exactly right. And why didn't they just buy it? Right? It's valued at 3.6 billion right now. Why didn't they just buy it? So they're testing it. They want to see if it works. They want to see, and actually, you know, it would take about 50 years worth of subscription before they would end up paying the buyer cost anyway. So it tells me that they are encouraged by what they are seeing, but they are not at the stage of not committing. They're still seeing that they could leave it in a year's time and not have to continue it further.
Even just today, they did a deal with Atai-Beckley, the psychedelic drug developer. So, I mean, it would seem like it doesn't slow down the company's appetite that much in the near term.
I don't think I think in the near term, they're still going to want to license assets because really the model that biotech has fallen into is that these large MNCs can outsource and allow these companies. Sorry, did I drop out there?
Yes.
Go on.
Yeah, sorry. They can outsource risk at the moment. They can allow the small biotechs to do the discovery work, to do the optimization, to take those risks at the beginning, and then they can come in and license.
He's cutting out.
Yeah, so they're basically acting sort of like a capital allocator at this point.
Yeah. Yes, which I think it works, right? It's good. It's not a comment. The problem is if these models like Chai and so on genuinely do de-risk the process of development, then long term there's going to be less of a requirement to buy a small biotech. Why would you spend billions and hundreds of millions in milestone payments when you can spend 50 million on your Chai subscription and get what you need and then do in-house?
I think it mainly also has to do with IP and speed. What we've seen so far in biopharma overall is that speed is one of the most important factors, especially when you look at geopolitics. China and those players. You want to be ahead of everything, and I think licensing will still be very important when it comes to locking down IP and trying to make sure that you're strategically positioned to change something.
Yeah, I think even if the bigger companies might be able to pursue new targets, usually from our conversations with them, they're not always the most likely to go for a first in class on something. Typically, they might want something that's been validated. They might not go for a completely novel target that's never been in the clinic. They don't have to. They can wait a little bit and be more selective. They don't have to take as much risk as they are the ones with the capital and the pre-existing revenue. They don't have to risk it all on one bet and hope that it succeeds. They would rather it just pays off rather than always going for 100 bagger or something like that. That's not what they need.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think in the near term nothing's going to change in terms of licensing opportunities. In fact, they might even get better as there's more and more collaborations and more impetus to work together. Although I did read a really interesting article the other day, someone on Substack, and I can't remember who, but they made this point that actually we might be entering a bit of an era where this sort of biotech window that we've grown used to over the last 30 years might actually close, because if this all goes to plan and these AI models work and do what they're supposed to do, then the big pharma will have access to these tools and small biotechs old practices, they can't adapt and build new things, whereas the larger MNCs will have de-risked the process. So it's possible that, this is a little bit over the top potentially, but the idea that biotech, as we understand it, might go extinct in the next 20 to 30 years. But that's one possibility.
I mean, if you look at early technological innovation in like the 1900s, 2% of it was roughly 290 something percent that worked with farming and normal factory work. Even when electricity came, there would be no jobs, they said. And when they made the light bulb, they said the same thing. We are typically scared of the unknown, even markets. One of the worst things for the markets is not knowing. It's not what it knows, but it's good or it's bad when it knows. But when it doesn't know what the future might be, when it's uncertain, that's the worst in terms of the financial markets, because that's difficult to predict. So I think it's people who may have a certain inclination towards being hyperactive or trying to predict things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think so. From the perspective of that article, it wasn't so much fearful, but more the idea that the model might change. So not so much that these people who work in biotech will go out of work and so on, but more that this model that we've grown used to of small biotech does the discovery, sells it, becomes acquired, licenses out, exit strategy, that might change over the next 20, 30 years into something completely new and probably just as profitable. But yeah, I think that's the mindset that we're coming from. So not so much scaremongering, but just that the model might evolve.
To be honest, in the near term, I don't think that's going to happen as easily as if you look at the overall posture. For example, Johnson & Johnson, they have J-Labs, and all of the other MNCs, they have life science campuses, and they kind of invite early stage biotechs to join them. It's also to make sure that they see everything and then something interesting that they might acquire, but it's also to make it accessible for biotechs and early stage biotechs to exist. So it really depends on how the posture might change change in the future. But overall, I'm quite positive about it. I don't think licensing will go away because it has been here for a long time.
Yeah, so. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I think especially if this was the case, then most likely a company such as Anthropic would take over all of biotech. Since they have
what do you think DeepMind's doing?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying, right? Let's see what they're able to do. Like the proof will be in the molecules at the end of the day. So if they're able to produce molecules that are better and improve the lives of patients, that's great. Obviously, I think they might find out it's not quite that easy, and that humans are quite unpredictable. It's not like when you're dealing with just atoms and bits, it's easier to predict what a computer is going to do because it's fully rational. And the thing that the individuals might not realize is we are limited by what we know about biology. We only know 3% of what actually happens in the body, and that's the real bottleneck. If we would have known everything about every mechanism in the body, how everything interacts together in every person, obviously the AI would have come in and taken everything. But we're far, far away from that because AI can only work with what we know. And we only know this much of the totality, which is one of the bigger bottlenecks.
I think you're absolutely right. I completely agree. AI is only building on what is available to it to train on. And when that is incomplete, then its model is incomplete. And I think the concern that I have is that with the capacity for inference and for hallucination as well, when you have AI tools running on limited information, needing to infer, to fill the gaps, to make sense of something, and they're doing too many calculations and running too many models on a super high scale for any researcher or group of researchers to then vet that information. I think there's a question. It's something we haven't done before, where we've handed over the thinking part to something else. And there's a capacity for this to run wild and go in directions that we can't vet. So they can do calculations and binding simulations and then make decisions based on those binding simulations. But at some level, that's going to corrupt.
Yeah. And also, there's typically a reason why when you talk to senior researchers who's been in the field for 20, 30 years, they're typically pretty humble when it comes to what they can do and how difficult it actually is. I feel as if some people that might be newer to the field might not have the same humility because they haven't gone through the same amount of trials and tribulations, and they think maybe it would be easy. Which, well, we're due to find out what they actually do, but maybe it's not that easy.
I don't think anything worth doing is often easy. So that kind of will always be there. I think, it's going to play out and it's going to become whatever it is. I guess these AI companies, it's in their interest to tell you that science needs them, right? It's absolutely in their interest. That doesn't mean that it's a binary outcome, that it's a success or a failure. The reality will be somewhere in the middle. They will probably massively speed up discovery. They will probably massively speed up looking for binding partners, etc., etc.
Yeah, but some would even say that even today, discovery might not be the biggest issue for pharma companies. I mean, they have plenty of things that they never take to the clinic in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, they only have that much space. There's, even if you look at, I believe it's for IBD, for example, they have difficulty recruiting for the trials. So, I mean, it's great that they're able to potentially make better molecules in the earlier stages. But at the end of the day, it still has to go to the clinic. It still has to be tested in real patients, which is very different from tech. You can just roll it out and you have people try it and see how it works. It doesn't have the same consequences as it does with a clinical trial. So I think that's also something that needs to be accounted for. And
I completely agree.
Have to play out.
So, I mean, what I was looking recently at rentasertib. So this is the first AI designed drug to get to phase 3. And there's a little bit of controversy there because it was potentially discovered before that. But regardless, it was picked as a lead molecule in 2020, and it's taken it 6 years to get to phase 3, which is completely within the 4 to 7 year window, which is typically cited. So on that regard, it's not sped anything up. When you look at the preclinical testing, it dropped it from about 33 months to about 18 months. So it shaved about a year off the process.
Yeah, but okay, sorry, but to interrupt you there are certain CROs in China, which, yeah, granted, they are using AI, some of them, but they are also able to do this already, whether it was with AI or without AI, in roughly
Absolutely.
12 to 18 months. So
Exactly.
it's pretty similar to what they already do.
Yeah. So that's exactly my take as well. It's like, yes, it was able to speed up a portion of this process, but actually the part that takes the longest has not been impacted, and the overall discovery then changes from 7 years to 6, or once if say it becomes approved, changes from 12 years to 10. Don't get me wrong, that is still 2 good years of money saved, right? That's not nothing, but it's not the revolution.
Yeah, I think we're not quite there yet when it comes to biology and chemistry. There's a lot more work that has to be done, but it's a step in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah, it's good to see that some of the MNCs are actually committing. That's the change that we're actually seeing. But yeah, I was a bit sick of seeing the PEs and the VCs trying to market some of these AI companies as the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But holy.
I completely agree.
They have to shield their bags, you know, they have to work for their money. Kudos to them and companies such as Anthropic for being a little bit of a fear-mongering cohort, potentially saying they're going to take over everything. I mean, by that point, we'll likely have reached singularity already and nothing will matter, more or less. Yeah,
exactly.
So at that point,
exactly.
it's not going to matter. Yeah. Eventually, we'll see when that day comes. But yeah, interesting development. And
absolutely.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be able to find more partnerships and continue to improve their platform. And hopefully it can bring value to patients at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, if you